This is Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wacey, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.
This is episode number 21 of Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wacey.
21?
Yeah, bro. Vegas. This is the Vegas episode.
Blackjack, baby.
21 or bust.
Do you like playing cards?
I do. I do like playing cards.
That's nice.
What's your favorite game of cards?
Cribbage and blackjack.
I thought you didn't know how to play crib. No, that's Monty.
Man, you and I play a lot of crib.
Nah, just kidding. That was Monty. I couldn't believe he didn't know how to play crib.
It's funny, like, especially kids of our generation, it's funny how many people don't know how to play cribbage.
Yeah, I wonder what happened in their households.
No fun at all.
Video games, or do you think they're too on the video games? I know Monty isn't.
But I played a lot of video games growing up too, and I still learned how to play cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this.
It's funny. Some people don't like it, but I don't know how you don't like having a cup of coffee, playing some cribbage, going to the casino and playing $5 blackjack.
I do like the blackjack when I'm at the Chinos. But let us know what your favorite card game is. Tell us.
Go Fish?
Is it Go Fish?
Crazy Eights?
Is it War?
Do you ever play Spoons?
I don't think so.
That game's hardcore. It's like when you put like the spoons in the middle of the table, and then you have three cards, and then you have to like take one out of your hand and pass it around the table until you get three of a kind, and then you have to grab a spoon. It's like musical chairs, but with spoons and cards, and it's fucking
dang.
Hardcore. Yeah, it's
I
wild.
like it. Sounds interesting.
It gets wild. We haven't played Catan in a while.
No. Where do we play Catan? We played somewhere else the other day. We did have a game of Catan. What happened? Yeah, you were, because it was you, me, and my brother. I thought. When did that happen?
The only time I played Catan with you is here.
Yeah, but I swear we just had a game the other day and we played. Oh no, you know where it was? It was up north in Keg River with my family. That was where it was.
I wasn't there.
You weren't there. That was in Keg River. That was a long way.
Missed that one.
That was like 10 hours north of here. I was in the wrong time zone. I'm sorry.
You're almost in the Northwest Territories.
Pretty close. Very close. So this just in, Wacey, he's got a dilemma.
Oh, yes.
He's got his classes set up for the fall.
I can either have Monday, Wednesday, Friday off.
Yep.
And have a pretty open schedule every day of the week.
Yep.
And
mostly school on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
School just Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
But I would miss out on an ice time that I go skate at regularly on Tuesday afternoons, which if I just keep
hockey.
This one, and then if I don't switch to 2 days of school, I have school Monday, Wednesday from 2 till 3:15, and that's it. No other classes. But then I wouldn't be able to go to the...
So you don't have one class a day on those other days?
Yeah, if I keep my schedule the way it is, I get to go play hockey on Tuesdays. If I switch it to if I want to where I can have Friday, Monday, and Wednesday off, I would not be able.
You'd only go to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
So it's school 2 days a week, or it's school 4 days a week.
Yeah.
So I think we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna.
So Wacey's looking for a part-time gig Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If you know of anything.
I am good at stuff.
But it's actually going to be the pretty occasional, mostly just Wednesdays, because Mondays and Fridays are kind of reserved for other things.
Yeah, I don't know what they'll be reserved for yet, but I probably should do some homework in the free time. Like that's the thing. Like now that I'm actually into the first week of school, it's probably a good idea to do some homework.
Yeah. Well, how's that homework going today there, bud?
I did a little bit. Yes, it hasn't really started off yet. I'm still just getting everything set up.
I guess it's only week 2, isn't it?
Just the third day I've been at class. And a lot of these classes, like today was the class I had today was the first lecture.
Okay.
So like we just half the class was like introduction and stuff. So
okay.
Yeah. It's mostly just getting stuff like software lined up on my computers and making sure I have the right books. But I should start doing some readings now.
Okay. So how about that wedding we went to last week? Good times?
That was awesome. I had a great
time. Wedding. Congratulations to Ashton and Terry.
Yeah, thanks for having us out. That was a hell of a time.
Week before that was the 15th edition of the Glen Keeley Memorial Bull Ride in Stavely.
Wasn't there? How was it? That was the first time I've been. I haven't been there. I've been there the last
since you moved to Alberta.
Since I moved to Alberta, yeah.
Since you moved to Alberta.
Sad. But how was it? It was good.
We had a good night there. Zane Lambert, big win, 90.5 points. Happy camper.
That's the second year in a row he's tied for the win there.
Won it this year outright, and last year tied with Jared Parsonage. And funny story, Jared Parsonage won the bull riding on Thursday night in McGrath.
Winning.
Yeah.
Winning.
Hashtag winning. Speaking of winners, we've got another winner we're going to talk about later in the show. But how about our guest this week?
Huge guest.
So we actually bragged him up like a couple episodes early, and then scheduling, happened. And
scheduling conflicts,
just some hockey night in Canada, preview stuff and
hometown hockey,
just a few little commitments and some charity events. And so we finally got Ron MacLean on the phone.
Nice.
For 90 minutes worth of interview.
That was great.
He's going to be on the show today, episode 21. And then we're actually going to save the second half for another time.
Double episode of Ron MacLean.
Not going to tell you when. We're just going to throw it out there somewhere. So,
got that to look forward
to, folks.
A side note. Do you want Eunice on Saturday?
On Saturday at the wedding?
Yes.
Well, I know that you wrapped.
Taco in a bag, midnight lunch.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it being prepared, but
you
left.
did? Oh, yeah. So good.
I mean, I wasn't that hungry.
It was funny because I had a really bad hankering for taco in a bag at Cochrane Rodeo. Didn't get one.
There was none.
And then
bam, it's at the wedding.
I was really happy about it. Anyways, just wanted you to know.
Well, actually, you know what else too was McGrath bull riding at the 2-Bit Ranch.
Celebration for the 2-Bit Nation.
Yeah, we saw a new bull there, Wicked Dreams and Nancy Vold.
Holy. I just seen the video of it this morning.
That's a bucking bull.
Good times.
Good times. So thanks to Josh and Tammy for having us. Cochrane Rodeo, got to go there last week, and then it was in Armstrong too. So been a pretty full bit of rodeoing. Went to the Ben Steiger Memorial Golf Tournament on the 7th of September.
How did you do?
We did not win.
Who did you golf with?
I golfed with, I want to say a couple members, Chris Thompson and Kevin Littlefoot, and then Mitch Oborn. So
okay, cool.
It was a good day of golf, though. Had a lot of fun. Beautiful day. It was like plus 26 in September.
The last summer day. We're getting snow here.
Yeah, it might be the last round of golf of the year. So made a good day for it. But
Tabernacle.
Here we are, episode 21. This is Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wacey. We're talking to Ron MacLean, Hockey Night in Canada. One of the icons.
Canadian icon.
When
you think hockey in Canada, you think Ron MacLean.
When you
Don
think
Cherry.
Canada, think Ron MacLean.
Hockey, Ron MacLean.
Yeah.
Don Cherry.
You're listening to Cowboy Shit, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.
Episode number 20, we've got our guest on the line, and he's in Stony Creek, Ontario. I'm in McGrath, Alberta, and Wacey's tuning in from Calgary. But it's Ron MacLean. Ron, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show today. We really, really appreciate it.
It's a total pleasure, Ted and Wacey. And yeah, Stony Creek, people will say, where is that? Sounds like a good rodeo name, right?
Yeah.
Stony Creek. But it's a town just outside of Hamilton, so it's south and west of Toronto, about 90 minutes. And I was telling Ted before we started here, I used to referee Junior C hockey game. And I remember one time doing a game between Stony Creek Warriors and the Grimsby Peach Kings. Grimsby's another town in the Golden Horseshoe of Southern Ontario, and the coach was so mad the Stony Creek Arena got dismantled that night. He went into the dressing room, he kicked all of the 2x4s that were used as players' benches in the dressing room, kicked every one of them up and out of their socket, and yeah, fond memories here in Stony Creek, Ontario.
That sounds like quite the fit afterwards.
And he was a calm guy. He was Graham Walsh. Never got upset, but that night he did. And I don't remember what ticked him off so much. It reminds me of one time Pat Burns was coaching the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he went into the dressing room, and he's just smoking mad, and he screams at all the Maple Leafs. He says, "Where's one touch? Where the F is one touch?" And the guys are all looking around and wondering, who's one touch? They don't know what he was talking about. He says, "One touch, yeah, you, Warner, Todd Warner. One touch, Todd Warner. We all know you're Dougie Gilmore, you're Gretzky. You can take a pass and you can one touch it. Way to go, Todd Warner. You cost us 2 goals in that period." And so from then on, the players all called Todd Warner one touch. It just reminded me of Graham going bananas that night here at Stony Creek.
Oh, wow. Well, and you still ref. I don't know how often you ref, but you don't know? Okay.
I stopped, Ted. Yeah, I stopped actually a few years ago. My eyes are shot.
Oh.
My hearing was the first to go with working with grapes, and now my eyes are no good. So, yeah, I'm out of that. I miss it a lot. But, it was a fun for 23 years as a level 5, which in the Canadian hockey program is a pretty high-ranking ref, and got to do a lot of university, college, junior A on down, and some semi-pro hockey. But now it's just I play beer leagues, and that means you can go and agonize over a blown pass, not so much a blown call, and those were much more costly.
Well, if your eyes are shot now, then you could be a rodeo judge.
Great. I'd love to do that. I think of all the sports, it's the one sport where I think they really got it right, because the 4 judges, 2 have the horse or the bull and 2 have the cowboy, and they can't collaborate. So it's I think the best system ever devised, and I get great excitement out of seeing how it's such a simple system, but compared to figure skating, when they had the perfect 6, and now with their technical points for jumps, it's just so convoluted and confusing, and sometimes it's easy to corrupt, but not rodeo.
You're talking about judging and being a level 5. Like, did you say level 5 judge or L5 or what was it?
Yeah, level 5. That was what. So there's actually 6
one
levels.
more, yeah. Because that's the tournament.
The guys that got 6s were always, or the women. The 6 was usually assigned when you had an upcoming international event like an Olympics or a World Championship. That's when they would usually have you in line for a level 6. And there was only, in my day, there was only 50 ever in the country.
Oh, wow.
Could be level 6s. So they didn't hand them out too easy. But a level 5 was more than enough to get, big events like the TELUS Cup or the RBC Cup. You could work those as a level 5.
Well, we have a friend, Bear Lightbound, who judges a lot of bull riding events and also is a ref, does a lot of WHL event, like WHL games and AJHL games. But used to be a bull rider too. But I think he's either 5 or he might be able to get a 6 to go to a couple of those bigger events because he was talking about doing a big tournament coming up, but I forget what it was. Maybe the university cup. Maybe that's what he was talking about. I'm not remembering right now.
It's funny. The first show we do this year on Rogers Hometown Hockey, Garrett Ranks is an NHL official from Kitchener, Ontario, and he qualified this summer for the U.S. Open.
Oh, wow.
So it's neat to see a guy work rodeo and hockey, but to see a guy referee in the NHL and actually make it to a professional golf event like that is unbelievable. But that, as you know, the hockey players are all, for sure, most of them are great golfers.
Yeah.
Even in rodeo, a lot of the guys, well, I'd say in the Chucks especially, but, Clint Malarchuk was a great example of a guy that would star in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the next thing you'd see him picking up flank straps in the infield, and you think, good God.
Or getting on a horse.
But
he told us a story about getting on one, yeah.
Yeah. They used to have a lot of, him and Dale Hunter, I don't know how Dale rode, because he was in Oil Springs in southern Ontario, but he could get on a horse and cause some mischief too.
I want to talk about, you mentioned hometown hockey. I want to talk about the travel first. That's got to be just wild going from Toronto to the other side of the country like overnight. You must not get to sleep
very much
during the season.
It's like a rodeo lifestyle, right? The guys that have to get from one rodeo to the next, and there's just no time in between. And for me, it's really, Wacey and Ted, it's nerve-wracking because we finish up, for me, on a Saturday night in Toronto, the Hockey Night in Canada duties that I do, and that's usually 10 p.m. at night, and then I sort of race to Pearson Airport, and it's terrible, like the weather's often snowy or icy, and I get to the airport and try to get to, say, Calgary or Edmonton, and then drive to Medicine Hat or Lethbridge or whatever it happens to be. And you arrive at effectively about 7 or 8 in the morning Eastern.
Yeah.
And then you're on the air the next day. And so you're, knock on wood, we've done 97 Rogers Hometown Hockeys. And I don't know, like last year as an example, I went from Corner Brook, Newfoundland on Saturday night because we did our hockey day in Canada in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. And then I had to drive to Deer Lake and then fly to Toronto, fly to Vancouver, fly to Nanaimo, and drive to Duncan on Vancouver Island. So it was crazy. And it all worked. And it was really, again, the last leg was the hardest leg. There was high winds out in BC, and I barely got from Vancouver over onto the island. But so far, it's always worked. But I find it very unsettling. I know with the Cowboys, I don't know how they park that part of their job or career. But for me, that was one of the trickiest, and is getting trickier because I'm back doing more on Hockey Night in Canada. That it's I guess I'm getting old, but I find it a bit stressful for sure. I don't even like to not sleep for a night, but you're doing it every weekend. Like that must be, I don't know how you do it. Yeah. Well, here you have a lot of friends, and you get so much joy out of the actual event. When you get there, it's not adrenaline that kicks in. It's just, I'd say, joy. Everybody's in a good mood, and the hometown hockey stops. And like last year, my toughest one was Lacombe, Alberta. We flew out on what was Super Bowl Sunday, so my flight was delayed out of Toronto. I finally got into Lacombe at 8 in the morning, and we were on the air at 10:30. And so I was a basket case. I'd been in bed for maybe an hour, and no amount of makeup or coffee was going to get me sorted. But I sat there with Daryl Sutter, and it was funny because there was a senior game going on between the Innisfail Eagles and the Lacombe Generals, and Brian Sutter coaches the Innisfail Eagles. And then you had all kinds of connections in Lacombe too. But Daryl Sutter came on the broadcast with us, and frick, he was great. He knew every name of every hockey player on both teams, and that just, right away changed my whole mindset from woe is me and am I ever tired to, wow, is this great? And he had the whole family was there, so it was just Christopher, his son with Down syndrome, who's the lifeblood of a hockey team wherever he is, and Wanda, Daryl's wife. It was just great.
I've got to ask about the CFR moving to Red Deer. Since we're on the Innisfail chat, you were a part of there was a sportsman's dinner you guys did a couple years ago for the night at the ranch. We can mention that a little bit too, but the CFR going to Red Deer, that's your home country. You've been there since you were probably like less than 10, right? You moved there when you were less, like maybe 8 or 9
That's
or something?
Right. Yeah, my father was retired from the Air Force, and he found work working with the RCMP as a dispatcher. So his job was to, when the crews are out on the road, the RCMP officer would phone in, and even for a license plate check, in the old days it was pretty basic stuff. They would phone my dad at the deputy detachment, and he would then do some of the research on that license plate, or he would help. Like a lot of times there was bad car crashes, and Dad would be liaising with the RCMP officer to just order up air ambulance or support. So he did that job for 15 years, and that's what took us into Red Deer. And when we got to Red Deer, Ted and Wacey, we had a rodeo called the Silver Buckle.
Yeah.
And it was a good rodeo, and that ran in the spring, for years. And but then, that I don't think they have it anymore. And now to get the CFR, it's disappointing, I suppose, for the tradition of having it every year in Edmonton. But I'm really excited that they were able to land it at the Westerner.
And what would your involvement have been with the Westerner in previous years, and like how often are you in Red Deer now too? I guess probably not very often.
Quite a bit. I mean, we're helping Carrie, my wife, and I are helping to co-chair as honorary co-chairs the Canada Winter Games, which will happen in February. And as an example, we have to be in February 15th in Red Deer to open the games and be part of the ceremony. And then because of that, Hockey Night in Canada has rejigged the schedule. Don Cherry and I will actually the next night work in Victoria, where we're going to be for hometown hockey on the 17th. So instead of being in Toronto in the CBC building, Don and I will actually go out to CFB Esquimalt, do a show from there with the Canadian Navy as part of our Hockey Night in Canada show. But that's all done to help Red Deer and the Canada Games. And as far as the Westerner, I do have a funny memory of just a couple of times I went in the parade for our exposition there. And one time I was on a parade float with Bill Ranford, goaltender for the Edmonton Oilers and then Boston Bruins. Other way around, Boston then Edmonton. And he was, just won the Stanley Cup in 1990 and being feted for being the winning goalie. And I was there because I was Hockey Night in Canada. I looked down in the crowd and there's Brian Sutter. And I'm thinking, good grief, there's the NHL Coach of the Year, Brian Sutter, who was a superstar for the Rustlers. And we're up on a float and he's sitting in the crowd cheering us on. And I think something not right there, maybe for Bill Ranford, but sure as hell not for me. And so I'm going out for the Innisfail Eagles event. And I heard Glenn Hall was there last year, who I just adore. And
yeah,
I've always said Brian Sutter, one of my favorite stories of all time about great hockey players, when Bob Bourne, who now lives in the Okanagan, Bob Bourne won 4 Stanley Cups with the New York Islanders and then finished his career in L.A. When he finished his NHL career, Stan Fischler of the Hockey News did a nice tribute to Bourne. Everybody knew he was a great leader and loved him as a hockey player. And so he says, Bob, you played with Potvin and Bossy and Trottier, and you played against Messier and Gretzky. Who's the best? That's the question. Who would you say of all those guys is the best? And he said, well, they're all the best. But if you're asking me who the most valuable player in the NHL is, then I would say it's Brian Sutter over in St. Louis. He has done more to lift that team than any player on any team. So I thought that was just a fantastic compliment to Brian Sutter.
I want to ask about Innisfail too, and the Danes family there, and you've been involved with the night at the ranch too. I guess I want to ask about that and the dinner you were a part of previously last couple of years.
Yeah, that was a great event, as you know, for the sports medicine group. We were doing a fundraiser, and that was, I think, right around the time of Ty Bosabon's passing, and it was just such a emotional summer. I remember, but I went up for for the Danes are the first family of rodeo. I mean, there's a lot of names could lay claim, but for me, being a Red Deer boy, I just know what Jack Danes did through the year. When I was on the air in the 70s and 80s, I would forever get calls from Jack, who I thought was phoning in to just do the Innisfail auction market report, because they'd have to give a listing of what cattle were available for auction the next day. And Jack would often phone at 9 or 10 at night and say, "All right, I'm ready to record the commercial. Are you rolling?" And I'd be in a panic, a 20-year-old kid. But he'd often phone in as well just to say, "Hey, Ivan just marked an 83 at Houston," or Dwayne has done this, and I want to get on the air and tell the story. And it was fantastic to see the love and respect for the industry that Jack had. And obviously I've gotten to work with Dwayne a million times. Because of Dwayne's back injury in Armstrong, which is now West Kelowna, in 1995, I got quite involved with the Canadian Paraplegic Association, which is an association that tries to raise money and awareness to help. Once you're in a wheelchair, you need accessibility. You need barriers broken down. You need elevators you can get on. You need ramps to get up stairs. It's just simple stuff, but it should be automatic that we make this available to everyone, and that's what the CPA does. So I got onto that for 10 years, and I would go visit spinal cord injury patients all over the country and deal with their families. And that experience, God, it was a huge thing for me to have that in my background when I went into Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon after the Humboldt Bronco bus crash, and 3 of the kids were paralyzed. And I remember talking to Jake Wasserman's mom and dad for quite a period of time because they knew I'd had a little bit of experience in that field. And I talked to them, and, we're in ICU, and Don Cherry was with me, and he was just really having a tough time with the whole thing. Of course, we all were. And finally he leaned over to me and he says, "Ron, you're not a priest, give it a rest. We got to move on here and see another kid." But Ryan Stresnitsky, who I think is coming into our Brian Sutter's Innisfail Eagles event, if I'm not mistaken, he was incredible. Just like Dwayne. Dwayne, when he was hurt, I saw him first at the Strong Rehabilitation Center in Vancouver, and then they flipped him over to Glenrose in Edmonton. And he asked Don and me to come by the hospital to see some of the other guys that had spinal cord injuries, and he was incredible. He had a spirit right away that he knew as an athlete how to tackle it, what to do to rehab, what to do to compartmentalize grief and worry. And he was just such a leader in that affair. And he knew not to make it about pity or not to make it, melodramatic. So Dwayne was my compass. And he really, as I say, when I went to the Humboldt situation, that experience was a godsend to give me a chance at least to not, nobody's going to get it right. There's no proper way to cope with a tragedy like that. But that certainly made me feel less sort of spooked when I went into ICU and saw how serious it was.
Well, and Dwayne is kept involved on the broadcasting side of the rodeo business now too. Is that where you would have known him from before when he was competing, but now he's on the other side of the game with the broadcasting with CFCW, doing this Canadian Finals or the Calgary Stampede. He's still very involved.
Yeah, he's tremendous, right? And he's been there. I mean, how lucky that he had an auctioneering background and a rodeo background. So he's got the gift of the gab and he's got the expertise. There's nothing trumps listening to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And obviously, too, when I go out and do the Stampede, it's lucky that I can just hand off to Bob Tallman or Melissa Hollingsworth and allow people who truly understand what it is, Butch Knowles, what they're talking about to do their thing. Because that for me is the greatest thing that goes on in broadcasting is when you get people that have been there. Dennis Potvin, as an example, has done broadcasting for the Ottawa Senators. He's Florida again now. But one night I remember he was on the air with Dean Brown, was the play-by-play announcer, and Dean Brown says, Dennis, there was Larry Robinson, Bobby Orr, yourself, Brad Park, some really great defensemen in your era. And what do you think about when you sort of assess who the best defensemen were? And he said, "Well, Dean, let me put it this way. There's the Beatles and there's Bobby Orr." And Dean says, "And you're one of the Beatles?" He says, No, Bobby Orr is the Beatles and the rest of us don't belong in the discussion. And I loved that. And that was a guy that knew, who could actually say such a thing. And so when Dwayne Danes talks rodeo, it's just a joy.
Well, and you mentioned that, but I was thoroughly, and I have been thoroughly impressed with your rodeo knowledge in the past, in seeing you work at the Calgary Stampede. And it actually, when we started talking about doing this show, I was at Scott Burns' house in Brandon, Manitoba a couple weeks ago, And he wanted to ask how you prepare rodeo-wise, like how you do your homework rodeo-wise when you're on the stage and you don't have much time to, somebody wins and they walk right over to you. Like, you got to know about every one of those guys in the finals that day.
Well, we have a bit of a trick there. Both, really all three of the announcers at the rodeo. Bob Tallman comes over and stands beside me. Davey Polson is right there, and Wayne Brooks is right there. So the three of them together are really great about saying, do you know, Ron, about this? And even, another name I should give credit to is Diane Finstead, well. And Diane's a former colleague at CKRD Radio and Television in Red Deer, and Diane's usually around the grandstand. So between the four of them, and even my own experience, I do, of course, my prep is essentially, I have lots of books and things, but I watch the Stampede from start to finish. So I'm only there the final weekend, but I actually sit every day down in Ontario where I live in Oakville at 3:30. The rodeo comes on, 3:30 Eastern, 1:30 Mountain, obviously. And I watch the rodeo each day, and that's how I prepare. It just reminds me, the names all flow back really quickly, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if you go as I have for 30 years, I've gone to the Stampede. So although I wouldn't be, perfect, I would certainly be pretty good on remembering names and sort of key moments along the way that I can talk about when I have to. But I do have that my sources, my secret sources on the stage. They're the reason that I look so smart if I do.
This is a part of what Scott had to say too. But do you follow it during the year too, rodeo wise? Like, I remember, I think it was last year or the year before at the NFR, you sent me an email during the finals talking about how good our guys were doing.
Yes. Well, I read about it, and I catch it on YouTube, and I sort of watch reports that way because I knew, obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury had some of the guys out right at NFR to shoot in practice.
Yeah.
So that was really, really cool to see, Strauss Milan and Tanner Milan actually was Tanner that was taking shots, and Jake Bold, before he got banged up, was out on the ice. So I loved that story, and I wanted to track down. Unfortunately, Jake, after winning the first two goes, got hurt.
Yeah, hurt his knee.
But we've had some great results at the last few NFRs, and so I do watch that one in particular. And when Don Cherry and I are, if we're on the road and we're in the hotel room after a hockey game having a beer, if there's rodeo to watch or bull riding, Don's right there. He thinks the toughest athletes in the world, number one toughest athlete, you'd never guess who he thinks, but he thinks the figure skaters are the toughest.
Oh, I would believe that.
And then he puts the bull riders. He just thinks the figure skaters, he says, the courage to go out there, stand at center ice by yourself, and then, no helmet, picks, blades. He just thinks that's great. But he also loves, I think he loves the bull riding and the rodeo because he loves animals too. So he worries about them in the chucks. He doesn't like the horses in the chucks because he loves animals.
Yeah.
He won't eat pork. He's a funny guy. He sees the movie Babe and then he won't eat pork for 10 years. But he's a softie, as we all know. He's kind of a softie. But he loves the rodeo and he loves the chucks, but he just worries for the horses more there. He can sort of see how the horse is his own, captain at the rodeo, but the chucks, it feels like they have to be part of a team. And the fact that they're tied together, that would bother Don, but he loves it. And we watch whenever we can. One year, I remember we were in Minnesota. We were doing the western side of the third round of the Stanley Cup. So we were in Minnesota covering the Edmonton Oilers. This is 1991. And we're doing the Oilers and Minnesota. And on the other side, the Boston Bruins were playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it's Don Cherry's old team, Boston. And it's kind of important that we keep an eye on the other game. Well, back in 91, the American network that was carrying it was called Sports Channel America. And you could not get that channel except in maybe 2 or 3 bars around the country. It was terrible. So we had to find a bar about an hour away from our hotel to drive to watch the game.
Oh, wow.
And Don, I said, you have to come. He said, I don't really want to go. I said, Don, you have to. You have to watch the Bruins. Everybody's going to want to know what you think of the Bruins. So we get to the bar, and the Bruins-Penguins game comes on, and I look over at Don. He's across the table, and he's turned kind of 180 degrees, and he's looking at the bull riding, going
no
on.
Way.
He was more interested in the rodeo, the coverage. It was on another TV screen than he was the hockey game.
No way.
Imagine, right? Yeah.
I would have
he
never
loves it.
thought that. I would have never, ever thought that. I had no idea.
Yeah, same with the figure skating. We sat during the Olympics in Salt Lake City every night that there wasn't hockey. We would sit in my room and he would watch the figure skating, and he would always turn away when the skater was ramping up to go for a jump.
Oh, no.
Because he didn't want to see them crash. He would feel so bad.
Has he been to the Stampede with you ever?
I think he may have been a Stampede. I'm not sure if he's been a parade marshal. I feel like they asked him, but they've never been able to get him to do that. But no, I don't know. I mean, he really goes undercover in the summer.
Yeah.
To his credit, he's smart to sort of rejuvenate. But I think he would, he loves the Cowboys. He watches it. He watches every show we do during every year, the Calgary Stampede, and he's completely into it. So, yeah, I think he would enjoy it. But Don hates crowds. He really hates traveling. So it's very difficult to get him out of the house once the Stanley Cup's hoisted. And we had the Burns family when we were in Prince Albert, of course.
Yeah.
We were able to feature, we went right out to their ranch and did a shootout there. And it's always great to see Curtis Lecition because he's got great ties to, Bostock. So he's a good source, again, for if I ever want to find out stuff. There's a bunch of people in the NHL fraternity that they know their stuff. And that's like, even I remember my first year at Hockey Night in Canada was 1986-87. And the next year, the first game of the season to start 87-88, I was in Chicago at Chicago Stadium to do the Toronto Maple Leafs at Chicago Blackhawks. And I was walking through the bowels of the stadium, and that's, again, where I said, Daryl Sutter came by, and he said, Ron, you did a good job last year. And I said, oh, thanks, Daryl. First year jitters a little bit, but Don Cherry was really good to me, and Bob Cole and Harry Neal. And he's, no, I meant the Stampede. He did a good job with the Stampede. Because he liked Lee Laskowski's from Viking, great bulldogger. And that was I remember.
Well, and to that sort of connection, Chris Russell's father, Doug, who they call Shaky, is being inducted into the Canadian Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame this October.
And I admire, and we had him featured too when we did Rogers Hometown Hockey in Red Deer. So we kind of featured the Caroline Bandits, the Vandermeers, Kurt Browning, and of course Doug. And he had the great line with his son when they were out sort of hanging around the chutes, and he said, Chris, you just always remember when they ask you how big are you, you say big enough. And yeah, that's Doug. I always say, Chris blocks shots like he's got that sixth sense of he understands time and space for whatever reason. He can get a puck a stick or a foot in the, shooting lane every time. And that's got to come from his dad's spatial awareness, because be out there with, the bull fighting was so impressive again this year at Stampede. I don't know how many guys they saved, but it was just, that is, they are the paramedics, obviously, of our universe.
Oh, definitely.
And when they do their thing, it's so admirable.
You mentioned Don, and you've mentioned Bob already. I'm wondering how similar those two guys are to work with, or just in general.
They're the exact same age, 85-ish. They are both really birds of a feather in terms of their attention to, I don't know if you want to call it superstition, but preparation is probably the right word. Each guy is a real stickler for everything according to Hoyle. Like Bob Cole, his things are, if we're four of us driving to the rink on the road, he has to have the passenger seat. He never drives, but he never sits in the back seat. He's got to be the passenger. And when, he works, he's got his belt off, his pants undone. He's got to be loose and comfortable. And he's got just so many little idiosyncrasies that make him great. And Don's the same way. He's got to have, a coffee at the 10-minute mark of the first period and a coffee just before the coach's corner. And he's got his morning ritual. He writes out, what he's going to do in great detail. And Bob Cole's the same way. He's super slow when he writes. Bob Cole, he will go into the coach's office to get the starting lineups. And the coach is so upset because it takes Bob a half an hour to write out the 12 forwards' names. And but they're great. Bob sounds like hockey and Don sounds like hockey. They're just, it's funny. We were just talking at a weekend Labor Day party about the two of them and how lucky we are. I am shocked that this is my 33rd year working with the two of them.
Oh yeah.
Bob's he won't do as many games now as he did in his prime, but he's still in his prime. It's just, you know how it works. There's others that they're trying to get in there. So, but he's great, and they've been good counsel to me, over the years, especially that first year. Funny enough, after that game, I mentioned when Darryl Sutter came up and said, "Good job, Ron, last year," and Then the next day we flew back to Toronto. And we were in Maple Leaf Gardens to do Hockey Night in Canada, because the game I mentioned was a midweek game, we called them.
Yeah.
Then Saturday night, we were back in Toronto to do Hockey Night in Canada, and Bob Cole came over to me and he says, "Kid, don't change a thing." And it was just a nice thing to sort of give me a boost and vote of confidence. And Don was the same way. He was behind the scenes. On the air, he could be a little rough, but behind the scenes, he was always a good guy to kind of guide me through the rookie years when you're scared skinny.
Well, and Don and Bob Cole are really similar, and I'm kind of curious about Don in the hockey world compared to Bob Tallman in the rodeo world. I'm thinking those two are pretty similar too.
Yeah, for sure. Stylistically, if you think about it, I would say Don is not the wordsmith that Bob is. Bob is just a song. Every time he sings, it's a song, and they both have a very, I think, a great respect for the Lord in the way they sort of treat people and things, and they're both kind of. Bob Tallman is not overly flamboyant in his dress, right? He won't look shabby by any stretch, but he's not. He hasn't made his costume, I don't think, a big part of his shtick. But he really respects life and family and the sport. And I think that's the similarity with Don Cherry. That Don is not about, the 5-star hotels or any of that. He's clearly committed to the family life that hockey becomes. And him and his son Timothy are out scouting for the Ontario Hockey League's version of Central Scouting. They go out each week to scout minor midgets in Ontario. And he has his whole obsession is to get it right so that the kid can have his bath, can understand what he's to do when he goes to the rink, wear a shirt and tie, what he's to do when the anthem plays, get your hat off, what he's to do on Remembrance Day, get your poppy on. He's got all these little things that he wants, that he thinks are way more important than the outcome of the hockey game. And Tallman's a lot like that. When I listen to Bob speak, Bob is all about the Western way of life and how to honor that. So I love the two of them in that regard.
Working with Bob, he's been at the Calgary Stampede the same amount of time that you have, I would imagine, correct?
He's a little longer, yeah.
Okay.
He did his first Stampede. We were figuring that out, we think, 43 years ago. I've done 33 years. I did my first in 84, so it's actually a little longer.
Okay.
But my first rodeo was 84, and then I missed a couple. There was a couple of years, I think CBC didn't have the rights or whatever it was, or they just wanted me on the Queen's plate because the Queen was in town or something stupid. But I did miss two along the way, but I've certainly, and he has not missed. He is definitely, I feel like I used to get such a hoot out of walking onto the Stampede grounds, and I would hear Ed Whalen's voice booming from the Kinsman Dream Home Lottery booth. And that would be my first feeling that I was home. And then the second would be to hear Tallman, coming from the grandstand microphone. And it's funny, even this year at 3:30 on the Friday, the first day of the rodeo, which would have been around July 4th, it was July 6th. So July 6th, 3:30 Eastern, I'm in my sort of TV area of my house in Oakville, Ontario. And Mark Lee and Butch Knowles are sort of talking to set up the day. And I could hear Bob Tallman on the PA in the background. And it was just reminded me so much of when I used to hear Ed Whalen. To hear Bob Tallman's voice was like, oh, God, good. There it is. Everything's right in the
it's
world.
All the same. What's been your favorite moment in Stampede history since you've been there?
Well, one of mine is, for some reason, Wacey Cathy and Charlie Sampson in bull riding had an incredible go back in 1985. And that was my first, that particular year, I just remember there was a bad accident in the wild horse race, crazy event we used to run, and the Coppathorne families, Tom Coppathorne was a guy that was really, you have all these people that you remember helping you along the way when you didn't know anything, and so I was kind of into the Coppathorns in the wild horse race, and not a family member got hurt, but a guy did get hurt quite badly, and that scared me a little. I was, I used to march back and forth in the chutes thinking I was king of the walk. And then I realized how deadly the animals were. Anyway, I just remember Wacey Cathy, we came in as maybe so Cody would have been world champion, Cody Snyder in 83. Wacey was right up there anyhow. And him and Charlie Sampson had a fantastic Sunday, and Charlie won it. And I just remember that showdown being the start of my love affair with the short go on Championship Sunday. And then the next year, it was Robin Burwash and Stevie Dunham in the bareback, had 4 go tiebreakers, and that was freaking electric. And it just has never, lots of things stand out for me. Morgan Grant, I remember cheering him on this year, and nothing was really going right. But I remember when he did win one event and finish second in another, as he split the tie-down roping and bulldogging money, and just had a great rodeo. And that was a fantastic story. And I also, of course, just to think of Jake Thurston and the whole, how Skeeter Thurston's wife went into labor on Championship Sunday, and a few years later, their kid that was born on a Championship Sunday ends up winning the first of 3 in a row. So those would probably be, and I was happy for Dwayne. When Dwayne won Calgary, I guess that's the other one that just really jumps out at me, because I remember one of the things I love most about Dwayne Danes is, never mind how he overcame the back injury, but before he got hurt, one time he got marked a 68 and he did not get a re-ride. And that's unbelievable, right? For a 3-time all-around champion and a Canadian saddle bronze champion to not get a re-ride on a 68. And he didn't complain one iota. He was so gracious in the interview about, that's how she goes, So I love his humility. And so when he won, I was, needless to say, moved to tears a little.
My jaw is on the floor right now, listening to you talk about Wacey Cathy and Charlie Sampson. Like some of our folks in rodeo today don't even know those names. I think it's just incredible, and it's an honor to me to be able to talk to you about those guys, because I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Well, that was a time, right? That was when Lane Frost was king.
Yeah.
So I mean, I interviewed Lane, and then the week following, he's killed at Cheyenne. Lots of memories, because those are my first impressions, right? And another name that you might get a kick out of is there was a matchup. Rodney Lipgard was going to ride Redip, and we were really looking forward to that. That was the guy that was leading the world standings, and the bull that was the new Rambo, and we were all excited. And I happened to be in the chutes for that one, right behind it, right there, watching, and just full of anticipation for this classic showdown. And it lasted, I'd say, 2/100ths of a second. Redip had Rodney on the ground and in the dirt so hard, so fast, and you could feel it, right? There's certain feelings that are hard to explain. When Ben Johnson used to run, Ben Johnson would run on the spot at the Hamilton Indoor Games Stadium. The whole frickin' building would shake. Vince Carter of the Toronto Raptors, the whole bloody Air Canada Centre, which is now Scotiabank Arena, would shake at the power of that man stepping down onto the court. They would blow the woodwork apart. And, of course, when the cowboy hits the dirt in bull riding, unless you're there, you don't feel the thud quite the way you do when you're there live. That's why Innisfail's rodeo is so unbelievable. You're so close to the action, right? And I happened to be there when Rodney Lipgard went down. And I've seen a few others, obviously have terrible spills. But that one, just the force of Redip throwing him, I never forgot it. I never forgot what it felt like. Never mind what it looked like. I just never forgot what it felt like. And again, I just thought, wow, what a vocation Rodney's picked.
Oh yeah. Well, and being that close to it, like you would have actually felt the ground move when you hit the ground.
Yes.
You'd have feel the power of the bull, like it's.
Everybody in the chutes, the quick work of the bullfighters in a moment like that. It's just it's a tornado. There's no other word for it. It is a frickin' tornado. And I just am so amazed at it time and again. And this year was a pretty special bull riding final at Calgary. It was a tough battle right to the end. And, I've seen so many, been really blessed to see so many of the great cowboys. So but those early ones were highlights for sure.
Oh, I'm just amazed right now. I think it's so cool. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us today. I want to ask about our sport, rodeo wise, and you've seen it at Calgary. Calgary's the premier event in Canada, let alone the world. But what do you think rodeo is lacking, or what does it need to do to get to that next level? We've talked about it for years, but you've seen the NHL go from, and make huge changes and make huge progress in the sporting world. What do you think our rodeo business needs to make that next step?
Well, it's funny because the bull riding, obviously, in and of itself, kind of became the lightning rod. It was the one thing that everybody seemed to equate with the new extreme sports, whether it's snowboarding or slopestyle skiing, etc. So that everybody wanted it to be sexier. Every sport, NHL included, they were trying to get to a place where younger people would start to enjoy it. But I don't know about whether that's right or not. And I'll give you the best example for me is the CrossFit. We got a kid from Red Deer, just finished second in the world at the CrossFit World Championships in Madison, Wisconsin. His name is Patrick Vellner. And they only did 2 hours of coverage on the weekend of the finals. It's 4 days, about 14 events, and they don't even tell you how many events there's going to be because they don't want the athlete to sort of taper and save some of their energy. So they surprise them with how many events, and they surprise them with the various things that they'll have to do during the CrossFit Challenge. And it's so chaotic. I look at it and I say, that's not made for TV at all. That isn't TV friendly at all. And it's doing really well. And I think my heart is still with tradition. Rodeo is, as we've said, it's a way of life. I think it's really great for those who get to experience it. And then, I think the NHL is in the same conundrum. You just have to, I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know what the gambling situation is with rodeo, but for sure in basketball, they're going to leap onto the gambling connection that's going to be available to them now, where you can bet on the next guy that's going to throw it, free throw, or the next guy is going to take a shot. So gambling is going to be a bit of like it was for the NFL, a way to hook the viewer. But I don't really approve of that, so I wouldn't use that as my way of growing the sport. I think the sport is great, and I think it's great because it's traditional, like baseball. I think we're always going to be in that complicated arena of trying to say that to the animal activists or to say to the people who are really. It's funny. There's more gun violence, right? It seems like, but people will always equate hockey and football and rodeo with danger, but they don't mind a figure skater without a helmet. So it's a really frustrating thing when you try to. I wrote a little article, a fun article, mostly for children, about sitting and watching the rodeo with my standard schnauzer Jackson, and just explaining to him, why rodeo is great and why the animals are happy as a lark. Just because I feel that, when I come out to do the Stampede, I'll get lots of social media criticizing me for partaking in this, old-fashioned, violent abuse of animals, and frustrating, right? But how am I you can't convince people against their will. A man unconvinced against his will is unconvinced still. So it's no sense to waste your breath. I used to get the hugest kick out of listening to Bob Tom, maybe out of Cloverdale's, one of the rodeos that gets the most protests. But it's great. I wouldn't worry. I think the setup is fabulous. The money is there. I really wouldn't change a thing.
You're listening to Cowboy Shit, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.
Thanks again to Ron MacLean for being on the show this week, taking the time to visit us from Stoney Creek, Ontario.
Have you ever been there?
No, not yet. We were supposed to have a bull riding in Hamilton the first year of the Monster Energy Tour, but it never happened. Got canceled, but apparently those two are really close by, as Ron said. So
nice.
Did you pass out at one point during that interview from just being so freaked out over the whole thing?
No. It was good listening. It was good listening. It was amazing. It was also hard, having my phone on mute, then unmuting it to say stuff, because by the time I get it unmuted, it's just it was too late. Yeah, the moment passes, so I'm just okay, I'll just sit here on mute and listen to these guys talk, which was fine. It was good. He fucking was great.
Was there anything you wanted to ask that we didn't get to?
No, you guys covered it most. Covered it all.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool.
Sorry about that. That was kind of logistically difficult to make happen.
We were worked out the way it did, though.
Yeah, we were in 3 different places that day. Mm-hmm. So
I was at the university, standing in line to get my train pass.
Yeah. What is everybody else doing? They're just getting their train pass. Wacey's talking to Ron MacLean.
Yeah, it was wild. It was pretty cool. It's pretty cool to hear like the stuff that you don't get to like that he doesn't talk about on TV. Like it's like anytime you talk to somebody like that, it's like that off the record stuff you don't really get to hear all the time.
Yeah.
And like talking about Bob Cole and
Bob Cole and Bob Tallman. And how about the rodeo story?
I was fascinated how like well he could like recall the names, like just pick them up. It's like Wacey, Charlie Sampson, like just bam, bam, bam. It's like wow. I can't even do that.
I was totally impressed. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely the coolest interview we've done by far, I would say.
Seems like we say that every time.
That's good, though. With what we should be saying.
Hopefully.
But yeah, freaking awesome. Hopefully everybody else enjoys it as much as we did.
Yeah, tell us your thoughts on the Roncast. We sure enjoyed bringing it to you.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Hope
it was
you
good.
Enjoyed it. What was your favorite Ron story?
I liked the one about when he does his broadcast, Bob Cole. He has to like undo his pants and like basically get undressed in the media box or whatever to do the broadcast. It's pretty funny. Oh baby.
It was cool though.
What about you? What was your favorite Ron moment?
Well, it had to be the one where he's talking about Charlie Sampson and Wacey Cathy riding it out for the 1985 title. Like that's 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's longer than we've been alive.
Yeah, I was born in 90. You were 92. Like it. Yeah,
that's pretty amazing. It's great. Like 33 years of the Stampede, man. That's unreal.
Well, he's been to as many rodeo perfs there. If I think at one point he worked all 10 days. That's one thing I didn't ask him, but
I think so. I think early in his career he did.
The whole rodeo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but yeah, he's been in the Stampede more than a lot of people that a lot of people ever. Mm-hmm. But even if he only goes to one a year, I'm still impressed by how he keeps up with everything. And I was blown away last year when he emailed me during the NFR. I thought it was one of the coolest things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And when he talked about like when he was on the shoots, I can't remember what bull or what guy it was.
I want to say Redip, and it was Robin Whitgard.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
And his experience,
just him like describing like being there and being in the moment, like being able to like recall that is pretty cool.
And how about Don Cherry being a bull riding fan? I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Well, Don's kind of a rough and tough guy, but yeah, it's pretty cool to hear that. Yeah, like someone like you wouldn't expect like to even think about it to like have that much of an appreciation for it. It's pretty interesting.
So Don, if you're listening, or if anybody knows Don that can hook us up,
Ron.
If you ever want to come to a bull ride, and we'll make it happen. Give you the full tour. Put you on one if you want.
We should get Bob on the television broadcast for the PBR.
Oh, that'd be cool. Wouldn't it?
Baby.
That'd be wild, wouldn't it?
That'd be pretty funny. That'd be awesome.
That'd be super cool. I wonder if he's a bull riding fan too. I didn't ask about that.
I don't know. Maybe. Dang. He's from PEI.
That's true. He is. But we had an event in Moncton last year. It's only about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I'm sure.
From Charlottetown.
I'm sure he is.
It's really not that far.
People out there like.
I thought he's from Nova Scotia.
I thought he's from PEI.
Pretty sure you're wrong.
Whatever, man.
I'm gonna Google it.
It's all the same out there.
And I'll look it up. Bob Cole, hometown.
Neither of us
were even on it.
We're idiots. But anyways, it's pretty much the same thing out there. Newfoundland.
No, it's not even close. Newfoundland's really far away from the other ones. Yeah, it's like a 10-hour.
Pretty much they all talk the same out there. It's all.
No, they don't actually.
Yes,
Moncton's kind of got some French influence, and
you go work up north for a couple winters, and it all sounds the same.
Haven't done that yet.
10 out of 10 would not recommend.
Thanks again, though, to Ron for being on the show. That was totally incredible, and we appreciate your time, and we appreciate your, basically, I want to say love for our sport and passion for the rodeo and the Western lifestyle and chuck wagon racing. The Calgary Stampede. We just appreciate it. So thanks again for taking the time to be on the show, and we look forward to part number 2. Stay tuned for that. I don't know when it's going to be happening yet, but it's going to go. It's going to happen.
I mean, yes.
So
it's got to get out there.
So make sure you keep listening because it's going to be a good one. But so we'll go to a Team Canada report, wrap up the show.
Canada report. Yeah.
All right. Okay, then. Biggest news this week in the PRCA world is Curtis Cassidy wins the Wrangler Tour in America.
Oh, he won that?
He won the Tour Shootout, Puyallup, Washington. Won like $17,000.
Damn.
Moves into number 1 in the world in the bulldogging. That's number 1.
Pretty badass.
He's got almost $100,000 won this year. Contender for the world title.
We've got 2 contenders for the world title.
We do, because Scott Ginster's number 3. He's got 91,000 on the year already.
That gives us good job, man.
Yeah, and Tanner Milan, he's number 16. He's about $1,200 out of the top 15 right now, but it's not over yet.
It ain't over until the end of the month.
It's not over yet. By the next episode, it's going to be pretty much over, but not this episode.
Will the grassroots finals count?
No, they don't count to the PBRCA standings. Okay. And they're right after that. But that is the last weekend. Like, Hannah should be the last.
Hannah's the last one.
Hannah should be the last
all comes
Canadian
down
one.
To Hannah.
Should be the last Canadian one. But we've got those two Bulldoggers in the top 15. Then you got Zeke Thurston, Clay Elliott in the Bronc ride. And Zeke's number 6, Clay Elliott's number 8. Carmen Posabon still in the top 15 in the barrel race, and she's number 11. She's inside by 5,000 right now, and number 16 she's ahead of by 8,000. So last couple weeks of the season here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Canadians inside the top 15. If you include Oren Larson, who's number 4 in the barrel
The
ride.
O-Dog.
He kicked ass in Puyallup the other day too. He's got 117,000 won all the year. Clint Lay's number 16. He's got $2,800. He's $2,800 out of number 15,
Which is attainable.
So, I mean, another one we've seen too that's been sneaking up in the team roping standings, Colton Schmidt. He's only out of the top 15 by $4,600.
Also very attainable.
Yeah, number 18 in the team roping. So we're at, we got 1, 2, 3,
7 with
4,
Oren.
5, 6. No, just 6 with Oren. I didn't count very good. 1, 2, 3.
Ted's still
4,
learning how to
5,
count good.
6. And then we could have as many as 9 if we have Clint, Tanner, and Colton.
Nice.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Be great.
So
It's awesome.
here's to Canada on the world stage. And last couple weeks of rodeo, we got Old Soberfest this week. Next week's Brooks, Grassroots Finals, Hannah, and our Canadian season's over.
All roads lead to Hannah and the Grassroots Finals.
And then the CFR 45 in Red Deer.
Are you going to go to James Barker Band this weekend in Olds?
Yes.
You should go. It's going to be a good one.
Saturday night, right? We'll be there.
Would recommend.
Check it out, Old Soberfest, CFR 45. She's all going to be good. We'll see you down the road.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
This is Cowboy Shit with Ted and Wacey, brought to you by Everything Cowboy.